Namaste all. Thank you so much, Uttara, for such a heartwarming welcome note. I am definitely very grateful and extremely honored to be here today together with one of the most elite and revered group and community of the Shiva Vishnu Temple in Livermore, California. The temple has always been a place, a go-to place for my family and I, and we've always rejoiced attending all the activities, the various activities at the temple. Thank you so much once again for inviting me today as your guest speaker. And as Uttara has already mentioned so graciously about my education and my practice part, I would just like to add to that part is that I have been blessed and with so much strength from the huge family and the circle of friends over these many years. And apart from the huge family, both from my side and my husband's side, my in-laws, apart from that strength, I have also extracted my own strength through the practice of these meditations and exercises and yoga regimen that I've been practicing, and I feel totally blessed about that. We will be going ahead and doing this session for today. I will be taking questions at the end, so please do hold on to the questions because they are very precious to me. So we will begin with a short video clip today that I've produced for you. And it's a 10-minute long video, but I would be just playing the first 3 minutes of it. I feel that is more relevant for today's topic. And do watch the entire video at your own leisure. Let's play the video.
I am the universe, and this is the story of my creation. I am at my emergence. My creator is none other than the pure consciousness, who is the eternal, the all-pervasive, the omnipresent, the Purusha. Just like we do not see a current flowing through a circuit, but we do witness a bulb lighting up. Similarly, I am manifested by the energy of Purusha through the creative energy of Prakriti into my diverse forms. Prakriti is the first step in my creation, which thereafter unfolds into 23 creative and evolving steps to my completion. Mahat is the next step in this mystic play. The cosmic intelligence and intuition designs my structure just like placing of the notes in a symphony. Ahankara, the power of differentiation, creates self-awareness in me. This differentiation and realization of self-awareness leads to the manifestation of manas, the mind. Mind is the formulating principle in my creation. It is the bridge that connects the outer world to the inner world. The manas further portrays itself into 3 gunas or attributes. Sattvic guna transforms into 5 senses or Pancha Gyanendriya, connecting me to knowledge and wisdom. Rajasic guna brings action into my being and manifests in the form of organs of actions, the Pancha Karmendriya. Tamasic guna fills me with the 5 causal elements, the seed potential for the 5 great elements, which then diversifies me into my infinite forms. Finally, I manifest as creation, nature, and I am bound by time, the Kala Chakra, bringing in cycles and rhythm into me, creation, sustenance, and dissolution. My dissolution is my journey back home, a journey where I transcend the gunas, the manas, the ahankara, the mahat, and merge into my creator, my Purusha.
Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karvavahe Tejasvina Vaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste. Welcome to Graceful Aging Through Graceful Living. I am so fortunate and I'm totally enthused to share this knowledge which has been imparted upon me by my gurus. And I'm there doing my part to render this information, to share this information with everyone with my own capacity. Thank you once again for joining today. So let's begin by something that we all face together collectively, and it is nothing but the factor we call age and aging. Age is just a perception. It is what our mind sees and then creates a reality out of its perception. You know, just yesterday we were out for a walk, for an evening walk where the sun was setting, and because it's the holy moon, so it's close to the holy festival, the moon was up, really nice and big and beautiful looking. Next to that, you know, in that white sky, we saw suddenly this aeroplane which was zooming across the sky. And from our vantage point, it appeared to us that it was as if some big, huge rocket going vertically straight up and land, you know, about to land into the moon. That's what we saw as we were in that vantage point. But we all know in reality, the plane was just gliding horizontally. So it's all what we perceive becomes probably our reality. I very fondly recall my mentor, every time she would see a patient, she would very, very happily, very joyfully ask the patient, so tell me, how young are you? That is one memory I can never forget. Let's explore how the definition of health has been and how we can conceive and perceive that definition. Since 1948, we have seen this definition given by the World Health Organization, which says health is a state of complete mental, physical, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. How profound is that? Ayurveda, similarly, also has been saying the definition of health since past 5,000 years as sama dosha, sama agnishcha, sama dhatu mala kriyaha, prasanna atma indriyartha mana swastha iti abhitiyate. And this was extracted from Chusruta Samhita, one of the first known surgeon in human history. Let us explore this complete sentence, which has beautiful flowers woven together in one full garland, which we can really use as a life manual. It encloses the complete life manual, life managing tool in this one sutra. I would like to go over each one of these words, these vocabulary words, very quickly, so that in the end, as we continue to blind this thread of our knowledge for today's session, we make it a complete total picture. So the first and the foremost word here says dosha. Now, what is dosha? If we just comprehend, we also just viewed the previous video where we saw that out of this pure consciousness, through the evolving steps, we end up with something from consciousness evolving into matter. So when dosha comes up, due to the combination of these basic elemental compositions, which are the Pancha Mahabhutas, air, ether, fire, water, that makes pitta, and earth. Dosha for every being is conceived at the time of conception. So it is also present pretty much in everything that we are surrounded. For example, there is dosha present in us uniquely by the combination of these 5 basic elements into its unique proportions that will then create the uniqueness in us all. Then it is found in pretty much everything, like, for example, the table, the chair, the food that we eat, our life, the stages of life, plants, trees, name it, anything, you will find a particular unique proportion of these 5 basic components in it. For our discussion today, we will include these 3 major concepts. Vata dosha, which is the combination of air and ether put together. Pitta dosha comes from fire and little water. Kapha dosha comes from water and earth combined together. The next concept is the concept of Agni. That is really a very profound concept that we've been continuously reminded of each time, for example, when we eat food. Just try and visualize a stove which has a flame on it, and then we've kept a rice to cook there. We have put water in it, and then we've placed that pan on top of that stove. What happens? If the flame of that stove is very high, let's say we put it in the full flame and extra high strength, the food that is being prepared might burn quickly without even getting into the point of being cooked. It straight away is burnt. That is the Agni that happens in our body, which will lead to a Tikshna Agni state. A flame that is very erratic. Let's say sometimes it's very high, sometimes the flame is very low. The food that is result of that cooking might not be cooked completely and nicely all over. Some portion of that food might be cooked, whereas the other food remain uncooked. And that happens due to the Vishama Agni. Whereas if we put the flame really on a low condition, what might happen is either it'll take an extra long time for that rice to cook, or it might not even cook properly. That happens, a similar situation in a condition called Manda Agni in our body. So if we want the food to be cooked properly, we want to ensure that the Agni is at a Sama Agni level, which means balanced Agni. The concept of Agni is extremely important because we see here, as we go on with the slide presentation, also we'll figure out and see that the most important thing in our whole body system is that intellect that is innate within each and every cell to transform ourselves from one form into another form through Agni. So Agni is a concept that creates transformation, be it in our digestive tract, where the digestive enzymes play the role of Agni, or our intellect. How, when we listen to something, that information needs to be transformed into our own wisdom, our own understanding. And Agni plays the role of transformation there. We see in dhatu level, there are 7 tissue level in our body, which are rasa, rakta, mamsa, meda, asti, majja, and shukra. So when we are talking about Agni, all the transformations that take place in these tissue level, in this hierarchy, depends on how strong and how balanced our Agni is. After it goes through the transformation from one tissue to the another tissue level, the end product which comes out is called something that is ojas, that's an immune strength of our system. So dhatu plays an important role. The sama dhatu, if it is a balanced dhatu on all the 7 tissue level, we'll see that our body, mind, and our strength and immune system is reflected simultaneously. The next concept is called mala, and this is also one of the very important, crucial part of our body. Imagine living one day where the waste management in our community says, hey, I'm not going to work today. What will happen? A similar situation is taken place when the waste products of our body are not eliminated properly, or they cause a stagnation. The main 3 malas that are described are urine, stool, and sweat, and they definitely are very big indicators of the general health and wellness of each one of us. Many a times we check and see that, we examine the let's say the stool. And in my practice, I've come across many conditions wherein there is one health issue, but then we also figure out that the real root cause could be laying other than that main condition. It could be an area of where the mala is. Just to give you a quick example, there is one case of RA where the person would always have extra pain on her joints and bones if the stool is impacted or there's a situation of constipation, it's not being relieved. So how this waste product is interconnected to the person suffering extended symptoms of RA. And that's really fascinating when we bring this knowledge of Ayurveda into the real practical world. So if we see now the optimum health, which is a total health of a person, would need these factors to be intact. It needs a sama dosha, a sama dhatu, sama mala, and sama agni. And all these 4 aspects, when in a balanced state, along with 2 more components, which are extremely, extremely important, I would like to bring your attention to, is senses, the sense organs, and our mind. So when we put together a happy state of senses and our mind, along with the balanced condition of our dosha, dhatu, mala, and of course the agni, we are able to attain a health which we can call as a total, absolute healthy state of the body and the mind. Let's explore each one of these in much more depth. So when we talk about vata dosha, the very about basic composition of vata, because it is air and ether quality. Because of that qualities, it has certain attributes depending on what are the basic composition. So ether and air, we can just visualize. If there is ether and there's which is the space, and the air, what happens? Suddenly things will be moving, because the very nature of the air and ether is movement. We see vata movement as an essence of vata. The age, now because all these doshas, the bioenergies, are manifested in different forms. So they are manifested in us as our unique self. Similarly, they are manifested at our age, the life stage that we are in. And for us, the vata age is the elderly age. Vata season, likewise, is fall and early winter, and Vata time of the 24-hour cycle is 2 to 6 a.m. and p.m. The attributes, the very essence of Vata are dry, cold, rough, light, and mobile. And we'll see how each of these qualities bring about health or ill health to us. Similarly, we see Pitta, where the basic bhautic composition of Pitta is fire and little water. And Pitta in our body creates transformation because of the fire concept in there. The age of Pitta is puberty and adulthood. Season is summer, and time is 10 to 2 a.m. and p.m. The attributes of Pitta are hot, moist, light, and sharp. And now these are not just the entire attribute that would describe Pitta. These are the very most important ones that I've listed here for our session today. Kapha, on the other hand, because the basic quality, the basic source of kapha is earth and water, it creates stability and cohesiveness in us. That age is childhood age, wherein, if with the earth and the water quality, what happens? It just builds things up. So in the childhood, when kids are growing up, of course, that's the most growth taking place of the life cycle, kapha dominates more. Season-wise, late fall and spring, and time again is 2 to 6 a.m. and p.m. The most important qualities or attributes of kapha is cold, heavy, static, and dull. When we see all these doshas, and when we know what they can cause in our body in a healthy state as well as in an unhealthy state, we can totally identify them and take the necessary step needed to rectify that. For example, Vata, because it has the essence of movement, it creates all the physiological processes in the body, throughout the body, and our mind. For example, when we consume the food, from the time we ingest the food until the food goes through the whole process of digestion and elimination, we need that movement happening throughout our body. And that movement is created by this bioenergy of Vata dosha. Similarly, the breath that we are inhaling, exhaling, all the 5 vayus, prana, udana, samana, vyana, apana, they come under Vata doshas. If the Vata dosha, for some reason, gets vitiated, gets into an imbalanced state, we see these symptoms will be predominating in our health. So a lot of gas, bloating, erratic digestion, which means like sometimes I'm hungry, sometimes able to digest my same food in a better way. Other times I'm not even able to digest my food, which would lead to gas, bloating, heaviness, and all sorts of other arrays of symptoms. Similarly, if we think about the flow of ideas into the mind, many a times when the vata is vitiated, the experience is that there'll be either a lot of thoughts coming one after the other, or there'll be a lot of too many thoughts coming at one time. And that impacts cognition, that impacts memory. It could also lead to states like panic attack states, anxiety states, and all the other symptoms, so forth. Insomnia, arthritis, constipation, like I said earlier, also mentioned about that case where we saw that whenever the vata energy, the bioenergy of vata would aggravate, it would lead to a condition of aggravated arthritic pain in that patient, which means that, when we control the constipation, the waste, the mala, then that would also reflect upon the arthritic condition, because all these are interconnected. In the pitta, similarly, the essence of pitta is transformation. All the physiological processes. Let's see, when we ingest the food, it goes down through the energy and movement of vata, but then that food needs to be transformed into my own tissue. And there comes the very essence of fire, our Agni, which also resides in Pitta, the concept of Agni that helps in transformation. Let's say, just to give you an example, a piece of apple that we eat today, if I eat that apple, the apple transforms itself into my own unique self. If that same apple is eaten by my pet, that apple will be transformed into that pet, my doggy. But it's the intelligence in the Agni, in the Pitta, the fire, that can actually identify that how the apple needs to be transformed into myself, and how uniquely that same apple needs to be transformed into my friend or my pet or somebody else who's eating that apple. That concept of unique transformation is brought in to us by the pitta energy, the pitta bioenergy. And if there are any imbalance in that energy, we see all these array of symptoms, which would include, of course, the GI symptoms, reflects on the blood tissue also, early graying of hair, incomprehension, ability and sleep disturbances, anger, irritability, and all kinds of symptoms here. Here we see, we really realize the importance of Agni that resides in each and every cells of the body. The Kapha energy, on the other hand, which I like to call as a stamina holder, it is a state where things are being built up. If we look into the previous 7 tissue levels, it's fascinating to realize that out of those 7 tissue levels, 5, excluding the Rakta Dhatu, which is the blood tissue, and the bone tissue, the Rakta Dhatu is controlled and manifested by Pitta. The bone tissue is manifested by Vata. The remaining 5 tissue levels, they are made out of Kapha. So one can imagine the importance of keeping this Kapha energy into a balanced state. Maybe if, one tissue goes out of balance, which is made out of Kapha, it could be easier to bring it into a right condition. But imagine if all the 5 goes out of balance, how tough that is going to be to recover. The blood tissue, which is by Pitta, it's just one tissue. You can easily recover that. The Vata manifests in the bone tissue. Whenever Vata goes up, the bone tissue and the health of the bone tissue goes down. So it is inversely proportional. Here, when we see Kapha energy, it is connected, it's responsible for all the nourishment and building which might be the physical nourishment, physical strength, or mental strength, creating love and compassion for everyone. Whereas in an imbalanced state of the same kapha energy, it could lead to many conditions, and these are just some of them. Now we come to a very beautiful word that Ayurveda has put forward, which says swa asta. And health is nothing but being swastha. Swastha comprises of two parts, swa, which means self, and astha, which means established. Whenever we go to a doctor, when we feel not so well, when we go to doctor, when we expect that, hey, doctor, I'm at your office, now fix me, that's just purely one concept. When we really seek outdoors from our own self, we seek out for somebody else to fix us. Whereas Ayurveda strongly recommends that we seek that same help through our own self. Whenever we are self-established, when we are swa-asta, which means self-established, we are able to take better care of our own self, because no one knows myself, better than I am myself. So no one knows better about how I am going to fix myself other than my own self. If we are in harmony with our own inner self, within ourselves, it brings us array of options open to us. And kind of, if we are in tune to listening to our own self, we are able to suggest for our own to what needs to be done. It leads to health within and health outside, all around us. A harmony within us and a harmony around us leads to complete health. So when we are self-established, naturally the vritta part comes, which means we'll naturally follow all the regimens that would be helping us to self-establish ourselves. Because in Ayurveda, I have come across many times this question is Ayurveda about taking these crude herbs and potent mixtures and formulas? And my sincere answer to that question is that Ayurveda talks about 4 basic pillars of our own existence. And that pillar would include nutrition, lifestyle, sleep hygiene, and the 4th pillar is herb. In fact, it's also said that if the diet and lifestyle are balanced, there might be no need of medicine. And if diet, lifestyle are not balanced, then medicines are of no use. How profound this statement is. So I would like to come back to that 4 pillars and address them, each one of them particularly. The first point would be the nutrition aspect. Often we hear in this aspect of nutrition that, hey, tell me what you're eating. That question. But here, if we really delve into that component of nutrition, we would like to realize what is beyond just eating. In simple terms, Ayurveda, we always stress upon not just what we are eating, but what we are able to digest. So in any food that we plan to consume for our own and health, there could be 4 questions coming up. Firstly, of course, who's eating that food? Which means it leads us to the choices that we're going to opt for depending on our own dosha. If we are in a sama dosha state, we would naturally choose all the food that are beneficial for our own health and wellness. When we consume that food becomes equally important, and we'll come back to that again. What we eat is the choices that we make, and how we process that food is one major component that Ayurveda puts a lot of stress into it. If we just imagine, how the individual packaged food, they are able to put in that label where the count of calories are given. And that number, how does that number come? Whenever a food needs to be labeled like that, of course, it goes into that machine where the food is pounded, and whatever energy is released out of that pounding of the food is measured, and that energy component is then labeled, put as the label in that packaged food. Here, in that entire process, one key component that really needs a good thought is that machine can pound all the food same way. But that same food, when it goes to each individual stomach, like when I consume that food or my friend consumes that food, depending on our own state of digestive capability, that same food can release different counts of energy. So it all depends also not just what we ate, but also how my body is able to digest that food, and then consequently, how will it be able to release the needed energy and build my own tissues after that energy is released. So this concept of how is the food processed in us depending on our own state of Agni, our own state of Pitta, the Jatara Agni, the Bhuta Agni, and all the other, at all the cellular levels, how the state of Agni is will result the state of my tissues. When we go through all the foods and the list of the foods that you might have already seen many places, is that depending on the body constitution that I have, my own unique body constitution, certain food will be digested better for us, as versus if it is not a food that match my body constitution. And this list gives you a good source of what food might we pick depending on the body constitution as well as the dosha states. So if it is a vata aggravated state of dosha, then these are the choice. Oatmeal, let's say oatmeal, for example. So oatmeal, just by the look of it, we know that a nice warm oatmeal looks very mushy, moist, heavy, which is just the exact opposite of the vata energy here. So when we looked at the vata attribute, it was dry, rough, cold, mobile, all that qualities was there for vata energy. But when we consume just the opposite of that to balance that energy, we see that these food choices, oatmeal, rice, beans, root vegetables, they have the quality to balance the dryness, the roughness, the coldness of the vata energy. And when we provide such opportunity to our own self, we tend to be in harmony, which will lead to health. Let's come to this picture, which I've made, which brings out the information what dosha are more predominant at what time of the year, the day. I have written 6 a.m. and dawn here, just to let you know, because the year cycle as it goes, the dawn time and the dusk time would definitely vary depending on when the sun rises. Plus minus 1 probably, or 1 or 2. So the kapha energy would be somewhere between the time of dawn and around 10 a.m. and so forth. 10 a.m., 2 p.m. would be the pitta, 2 to 6 would be vata energy. if we really understand what are the qualities of each doshas that predominate at certain time of the day, we would be, it's very convenient then for us to decide what activity to put at what time of the day. Once we manage our day in a proper manner, automatically we'll see the whole week goes pleasant. When the week is going properly as desired, we see that the month, then the years, and our whole life becomes much more harmonized and much more healthier. I've placed few definitive activities on each column here. So the exercise time, see how kapha is heavy, dull, static. An exercise regimen geared towards this time, like early part around 6, would be balancing the kapha energy. Because kapha is heavy, we don't want to eat a great heavy breakfast right there. Because remember, it's not just what we eat. We want to digest what we eat. So at the time of kapha, we want something nourishing, yet not too heavy. All the to-do list that we have for the entire day, it is suggested that, because kapha has a lot of stamina and strength, so if you already have a list for the day, make sure you start doing them really early on in your day. When we come to this time, the day, the pitta time, I have mentioned stomach here because, like we talked earlier, the Agni, the fire component, it also goes through a circadian cycle, a rhythm throughout the day. Just like if you visualize the sun rises at certain time and then it peaks around noon. And that is the time when pitta, which translates into our own digestive enzymes that are present in the stomach, is at its strongest point. So noon becomes a time of the day where, because the digestive enzymes are naturally at its peak, it makes sense for us to eat and make main meal of the day, the lunch as the main meal of the day, because that's when the food is going to be digested to its optimum value. Just visualize yourself. There's a big flame of fire, and then you just put a small log into that fire. What happens? The flame would consume that log, that wooden log, quickly, and then because it still is blazing out, it's going to look around and see what else it could consume. And here in a pitta condition, we generally come across states of gastritis or ulcers. And the reason is because the flame is so high, and if that person is a pitta person, and the food that is put into that flame is a small log, because many a times we either skip lunch or we just eat something for that time, for that moment, to let us go through the day. The agni that is present, the flame, does not have enough sufficient food to work upon, and it starts eating up the mucosal lining of the stomach, leading to conditions of ulcers and many other gastric conditions. So please do make sure to satisfy that flame. No, give it a good lunch so that the digestive enzymes, they have enough food to work upon, and that food is going to be digested and assimilated in its optimal place. After 2 p.m., when we come around the afternoon time, because the vata energy predominates, and we know vata is something that creates movement, be it a movement of our food, digestion, thoughts, processing of all the ideas. So vata energy, I've placed few activities that would balance vata. Coming to dinner, again, same like the kapha, which would need a lighter dinner as compared to lunch. then it's a time that naturally kapha, because of that compassion, if you spend more time connecting with your own self, with your family around, this is balanced. As we go into the later part of kapha, since kapha is already in a dull and static mode of energy, naturally around 10 p.m., we might feel a little slow. We might want to go to sleep and just rest for the day. And that happens naturally, even more when we are in a balanced state. Let's say if we skip that 10 p.m. time, which I've come across a lot through my patients' regimen, is between the 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., again, we hit the pitta time of the day. Now, here I've mentioned liver. What liver does for ourselves? All the things that we've consumed throughout the daytime. It could be food that we've consumed, water, thoughts, learning, all the major works that we've done. Everything needs to be processed, needs to be digested, it needs to be metabolized. The nourishing part and the toxin part needs to be separated. So all that thing happens at the liver time, which I like to call, because it's the second, like, liver is the second heart. It's the another fire organ that is present in our body in the form of liver, which metabolizes everything that we consume. And also, along with that, it is also responsible for producing hormones and many other enzymes and stack up those cells at night time so that when we rise up the next day, we are ready to use those already pre-made hormones and enzymes for our own health. So in order to let the liver work uninterruptedly, it is extremely important that we shut down all our sense organs and then allow no input. So which means that we are not looking, watching something, we are not reading or taking in anything through our mind. We are not eating at that time after 10 p.m. And what that would lead to is an undisturbed functioning of liver. And the result thereafter would be that my cells are stacked up of all the hormones, chemicals, enzymes, everything that is needed for me to maintain my health for the next following day. The Vata energy, again, we come back to the same energy space where after 2 a.m., between 2 a.m., around that time until the sunrise time is the time for the Vata energy. And that's one of the most spiritual, most you can just be within yourself around that time, the best time to meditate. It is also important because here we see a lot of movements happening due to the Vata energy. So a great time to practice pranayama, self-reflection, and be prepared for the next following day that's happening and the kapha energy that would come eventually. So we now know that once we stay in this nature's rhythm, doing the right thing at the right time, most importantly, when we eat, the time, and when we sleep, letting those times be very consistent and regular, we will be able to be in total balance with the circadian cycle, and that would lead to a harmony, which in turn now would lead to health and healing. Self-examination plays a very important role because once we identify certain things, really before it manifests as a complete disease, it becomes very easy to take care of it even beforehand. So these are the few organs that I would suggest everyone to be aware and self-examine them. For example, eyes. How does the eye look? Is it too dry? Are there any pigmentations appearing? Because they really change a lot depending on how our health status is. Tongue is another great reflector of our digestion. So check your tongue daily as you clean them. Check and see if there are a lot of salivation, there are coating on the tongue, the taste is different, any different from a norm, because normally a healthy tongue should look pink, moist, no cracks on the tongue, and ideally, there should be just a pleasant taste, not metallic taste or salty taste or bitter taste, nothing. It should be just plain and normal. Skin tells a lot of things about our health condition, our liver condition. And there are many cases where I've come across when a certain thing is suppressed from the skin level, it goes and takes a location deeper down in a body. Just to give you an example, there was one case where some eruption on the skin, and the person just applied any ointment on topically. That time, the rash became okay, natural. I mean, after the application of that ointment, that rash disappeared very quickly. But after some time, that person started experiencing asthma. Now, when we did the evaluation of the case and we tried and gave the person the correct remedy, the very course of that disease reversed, which means the person who was having the asthma, that started becoming okay. The person started healing from asthma, but then the skin started worsening. And that was such a great, holistically, if we see, it was a great moment, because now we know that the original disease that was on the skin, which was suppressed and had occupied a location deeper down into a more vital organ, which is the lung, has been reversed. And so once the treatment continued and the skin rash healed, the person was healed completely. So be sure not to ignore or suppress anything that's on the skin. The skin is the largest organ of the body, but it is the least vital as compared to the other deeper organs. Stool, like we mentioned earlier, gives a great indication of how our overall digestive, or how the toxin levels are in the body, how the fat is being metabolized in the body, depending on how the stool is happening. Urine, again, the same thing, examine the urine every morning. It should not be cloudy. It should not have any sediments in it. It should be just clear, no strong odor coming out, a very mild yellowish color, and that would be indicative of a good health. Voice, many a times I always ask my patients, my clients, to be aware and cognizant of how the voice is happening. It might also change day to day depending on how we are in an emotional state. Many times we see that when we are sad or emotionally disturbed, our voice changes, because all the energy, the negative energy, probably accumulated in this chakra level. And the voice changes because it wants to protect that inner self. So being cognizant on how the voice quality is gives you a great indication. The next point would be appetite, which is one of the very important, because this concept of heal your gut to heal yourself has become very rightly a popular statement. And appetite is a great indicator of how the gut is at that moment. Whenever we consume a food, there is a certain time period that we consume the food, it goes through the digestive process and assimilates into the self body. And before the next meal, we slowly start feeling hungry again. The appetite which comes up at the next meal time, if it is a balanced gut, appetite will come naturally at the right time. Then we know that my gut is it's a proper healthy state wherein whatever I've eaten in my previous meal has been digested, and now I'm ready for the next meal. Mind is one of the very key component for self-evaluation and self-examination. Mind connects us from all the outer sensory self to our inner, the deeper state of consciousness. So the evaluation of mind every day, how is my mind today? How do I feel? Do I feel blissful? Do I feel very turbulent? Are there a lot of thoughts crowding? Are there space occupying things in the mind? Because like we digest our food, thoughts need to be digested at a mental and emotional level also. And if there are too much of stagnation, that energy is then blocked completely, and more opportunities like thought processes would simultaneously blocked. That would lead for us to not be able to connect to our deeper self, where there resides a pure potential to bring our own creativity. So when the mind is at a unbalanced or a very negative state of mind, we see that productivity and creativity is not optimum. So with all that information, I've listed few activities that would balance each and every dosha. Because after all, everything comes and narrows and funnels down to the state of us as a totality. So whatever body constitution that I am born with, by the way, there is nothing like, one dosha is better than the other doshas. After all, we need all the 5 great elements. We need the air, essence of air, ether. We need the fiery component, water, and earth component. So we naturally need all these 5 elements to work for us. And my unique self, my own balance, the prakriti, the very nature that I got, that my soul received, is at the time of conception, and the proportion of each vata, pitta, and kapha that combined to make my own unique self. When I know that this is my body constitution, I would then naturally select the right food, the right activity, the right lifestyle, and then, if needed, the right herbs for me. For vata people, routine, staying in routine. You can imagine, vata comes from air and ether. So now, just the very essence of air and ether is to expand. No matter how much space is available, it will expand and occupy that space. So to balance the vata, the very concept of creating a light boundary around that expansion gives it a great structure to function. Self-body massage, again, let's visualize a pot with some water in it. And let's, again, put that on our stove to boil. Once the water heats up and it starts evaporating, the entire water evaporates, and we see that the container which had water in it is completely dry after that evaporation. Now, at the second part of our experiment, let's add Let's add some oil to that water and then let it boil and evaporate the water. What will happen? You'll note that after the entire water evaporates out of that vessel, there is a coating of that oil along that inner side of the vessel. That's exactly what the real moisture is needed for balancing vata. So it's not just water that moistens our tissues. There needs a component of some oiliness, some unctuous part of it to make it a completely moistened place. Oil, so vata and oil really go hand in hand everywhere, nose, eyes, ears, really self-body massage. Of course, I've also mentioned observe silence, especially for vata, because again, creating that boundary where, of course, the whole naturally it expands. But if you have a little boundary there, it'll stay. And if we are observing silence, we are listening to the sound of silence. It brings the vata down because there you are able to access your full potential that lies in that silence. And that is then channelized for a proper usage by the energy of pitta and by the stamina of kapha. For pitta, we have realized that the mantra to balance pitta is to let go and take things easily. And for doing that, it's a big challenge for a pitta body constitution or a pitta nature, because just by extracting that composition from fire, we can see that letting go, it cannot just diminish automatically. So practicing the let go mantra benefits pitta energy. Kapha, on the other hand, needs a lot of moving quality to balance that, because by the very nature, we realize kapha, which is earth and water, will be very static. So anything that is static would completely resist any change. And that is the key component to balance kapha. Rigorous exercise, fasting, changes to the normal routine, because kapha needs movement. It needs to bring out that energy to create new energies. Whereas the stagnant, the very nature of being stagnant would be imbalancing the kapha energy. Chanting, singing, which all requires movement. And again, we'll come back to this point of springtime, because this is the kapha time, and this is what we would like to do to balance the kapha in us during the springtime. You could also visualize a time like a mountain peak, because through the winter, the mountain, there would be snowing, and so the snow would be piling up in that mountain. And when the kapha time comes, when the environment starts warming up, there's sunshine, and so the snow that had been piled up in that mountain through the winter time will slowly now start melting and flowing down like the river. A very similar thing happens in us through the winter. The metabolism is slightly comparatively on the slower side, which means we are piling up toxins in our body in the form of undigested food, which remains and clogs our respiratory system. It clogs our various channels in the body. And when kapha time comes, naturally the body will start to detox, and then we experience things like spring allergies, wherein a lot of discharges are coming out. In order to balance that, or even prevent from things like spring allergies, from coming up, what is it that we could do, pre-do? I mean, very proactively, we could do that. From the time of Vata, we start being cognizant of our Agni. We see how the metabolism is happening. Are we digesting food or not? Are we able to detox even prior to coming into the Kapha season? If we follow the nature's rhythm, that cycle that I showed you earlier, we would be able to prevent any mishappenings or any Kapha aggravated conditions at the Kapha time. Once we enter the Kapha season, we can still continue to do these regimens. For example, not to sleep in, even in the morning time or in the daytime, rigorous exercise regimen. So choosing, let's say, a very brisk walking or running or playing tennis, doing that kind of rigorous exercises as versus to the other activities of a leisure walk or just, doing a slow exercise would benefit kapha if it is more rigorous. Drinking warm water with a pinch of turmeric helps kapha. And this either, of course, throughout the day, but most importantly, at the kapha time of the day, which is right after waking up. So when you wake up, of course, you can sit and take a small self-reflective time, few minutes, bring your attention to your breathing. And then when you step out, doing your exercise regimen right at that time of the day balances the kapha immediately and grants you that energy to run throughout the day. Drinking warm water and pinch of turmeric after your exercise regimen helps to, again, now cleanse the entire system and prepares it for the meal that would be entering, that you would be consuming in that time. Ginger tea. Ginger is a very pungent spice, and anything that is pungent would balance kapha. Because imagine a state, let's say a yogurt. Just by the look, yogurt is thick, it's heavy, it's cold, all kapha attributes. Now, if we just do the opposite of that, which is, for example, ginger or black pepper or turmeric, that are more, so ginger is more pungent, turmeric is more on the astringent side, but both balances that kapha. I had another patient who had very bad allergies. And when we looked into, how the nutrition is for that person, how is the lifestyle for that person, we found out that in the nutrition part, the person was consuming yogurt at the breakfast time. And then, all these array of symptoms of allergies and stuffiness in the nose and the discharges from the eyes. When we really reevaluated that and changed and modified the breakfast component, we completely removed yogurt out of that diet. What was happening was the person who was kapha dominant was consuming a kapha dominant food, which was yogurt in this example, at breakfast, which is a kapha time, and then kapha time of the day. And in the spring, it's the kapha time of the year. So you can imagine all these four components of kapha aggravating factors coming together and doing its part. When we completely removed yogurt from breakfast, we were able to manage that allergies even prior to starting the medication or the remedies or any herbs. We were managed 50 to 60% just by removing that kapha aggravating yogurt for his diet. So doing and making the right choice at the right time is the key. Ginger and other spices also. So this is the time to spice up, friends. So go ahead and you add more spice to the regimen, to your recipes, which will balance the season And so as it is outside, so it is inside, which means, I really love this term, yatra pinde, tatra brahmande, which means whatever is outside, this very season that we are in affects us in a similar way inside us. So if there's a lot of kapha energy, kapha season outside in this springtime, which means it would be the similar situation in us too. So my digestion, the whole body system would be also accordingly in that same situation. So here, if I want to balance it, adding up more spice to the meal would naturally balance that kapha in me. So go ahead and add cayenne peppers, all kind of peppers in the meal. Add some ginger, some garlic in the meal. That would be balancing to the kapha. Detox, if somebody is really going through all the kapha symptoms, then detox might be a great idea. Sipping through ginger ajwain tea throughout the day would definitely help to detox the unwanted, unassimilated toxins, which are called ama in Ayurvedic term, would be very beneficial. Vamana is the choice. If you plan to do panchakarma, then you would be suggested, by your specialists to do Vamana to balance in kapha. Similar detox, but in a different form, needs to be practiced at a different season. So if it is pitta time, then we would be doing a detox that would match the pitta energy, which means we will not be opting for Vamana at that time, but we would be going to other regimens that would balance Pitta, which could be just doing a purgation. If it is a Vata season, then Bastis might be more beneficial. So depending on season, we also choose what mode of detox might be beneficial for us. With all the information that I've shared, I would really like to be open and ask questions, but let me just I'm so thankful that we are able to take this and tap into this knowledge that Ayurveda has to provide us. Thank you everyone for listening, and I will be open to questions, and I can see that there are few questions arising, and especially these are for the topic of fasting, and I will definitely take that topic again, which I didn't go back earlier also. So fasting in Ayurvedic regimen holds a very important place. And like with our food regimen, the fasting regimen also needs caution and to monitor, be it fasting for our own health or fasting as a ritual, as a langhanam for spiritual attainment. The only caution here is that whatever fasting method you pick up, ensure that it matches your body constitution. For example, on a very straight, simple term, Vata and Pitta are not recommended for fasting, or Ayurveda recommends a monitored and controlled fasting for these two body constitutions. And again, the reason being, Vata, the source is air and ether. There's no grounding, so it just expands and depletes more. And Pitta is the fire. It needs something to consume. If not, then it starts consuming your own body tissues. So fasting ideally is not recommended for Vata Pitta. For Kapha, yes, definitely some form of fasting on a regular basis is highly recommended, and that can be very beneficial. For Vata and Pitta, even if you have to do the fasting, you can always monitor it. For example, including oil or including some water, some form of food, whether it could be, season wise, like fruits, seasonal fruits would be very beneficial. And another more important concept is that do not try and see not to skip the lunch just because it's fasting. You can maybe do skip the dinner or do a light dinner or just water for dinner or just soups for dinner, but do not miss your lunch if it is a vata predominant body constitution or a pitta predominant body constitution. Include something, at least something at the lunchtime. And of course, spiritual upliftment definitely follows if our doshas are in a balanced state. For the spices, again, yes, that was another question. What could be the spices? So the spice that we've already been consuming, giving you an example of cumin, coriander, fennel, ajwain, asafoetida, peppers, black peppers, cayenne peppers, all these spices, they act as an aid, as a supplement for our digestive enzymes. So they boost up the Agni and they help to digest the food that you've consumed. That is the reason that Ayurveda always emphasizes on including the right amount of spice. Now, just a word of caution here is that we don't want too excess of a spice, and especially during the summertime, where already the fire component is strong. So we don't want to put the excess spice in our meals during summer. Whereas in kapha time, the springtime, we do require spice in our food to be able to digest that food better. I hope this information was useful for you. And this event, particularly the whole month, has been so special for all of us as we are celebrating the Women's History Month, celebrating femininity, the Shakti component in us. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming and being together. I wish all of you, I wish the Supreme would grace all to achieve a graceful life through a graceful living. Because in the end, no matter what we do, we cannot attain our enlightenment. We cannot attain the purpose of this soul without a grace from the Supreme. Thank you so much once again. May the Supreme bless us all. If you have any questions even later on, please do feel free to connect and contact me, and I would be sure to answer your questions to the best of my capability. Thank you once again. Hope to see you next time. Take care. Namaste.